Barbara, you want to introduce our speaker tonight?
So this is our beautiful speaker, Jonna Sanders. She is in Rhode Island. In January of 23, she did a great presentation at the Longwood College, Heart of Virginia Beekeepers Club. I can't remember exactly who put it on, but it was so good. And when we were brainstorming about different programs we could have, I suggested we had her, of course, not knowing that she had moved halfway across the country, but Zoom is great, and take it away.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Happy to be with you. Happy to be back talking to Virginians. So thanks, Barbara, for the introduction. So for those of you who have not met me, we are a military family, and I have spent the last, since 2004, in and out of the Alexandria, Virginia area, both coming and going from military deployments, and our family was there from 2016 until just last year. My husband is active duty Navy, and we are on our final leg of what will probably be the conclusion of his military career. So we are up at the War College in Newport, Rhode Island. So I'm coming to you from Foster, Rhode Island this evening. I have been a beekeeper since 2017 when we moved back to the United States from the Middle East. My roots are in Colorado. My heart is there, as well as Illinois, where my family has been farming since 1872. So farming and agriculture is really in my blood. As long as I've known, we've been talking about, corn and soybean harvests and crop futures and you name it. And so bees were a natural, jumping off point for me. And so tonight I'm here to talk to you about the Slovenian Hive, which is an adaptive beekeeping platform that's been in use in Slovenia since about 1902. My mother's family is ethnically Slovenian, so I still have about 100 cousins in that country. And so I have a little presentation. I'm going to get going here. I think someone needs to enable screen sharing for me, and I can get this going. Mike, are you able to help with that?
Does that work for you?
Let me see. There we go. Can everyone see?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So taking it away here, for those who are not familiar with the Republic of Slovenia, here's your map of Europe, and you have the boot of Italy here, and then right here at the very top of the Adriatic is a tiny little country called Slovenia. Used to be part of Yugoslavia. Before that, it was part of the Austro-Habsburg Empire. So Slovenes were always ethnic minorities there, and always in love with bees, specifically with the carniolan bee, which is the native bee species to Slovenia. And Slovenes have a very long history with working carniolans that go back not just generations, but centuries. And so if you take a look here at some of these here on the left, what you will see is that they are not yellow, that they are more of a gray underbellied bee. And so they look very different than our carniolan bees that we have here in the United States, which I think are genetically more of a mixed with the Linguistica genetics. So Slovenes and their love affairs with bees have been going back for generations, as I said, and Slovenes only work these bees. This is the only bee species that is allowed by the Slovenian Beekeeping Association for a number of reasons, specifically due to their gentle nature as well as their wonderful overwintering capabilities. So just like in other countries in Western Europe, Slovenes during the 16th and 17th century were primarily using skeps This was, this was the primary method of keeping bees in Europe at the time. And although it was useful, it had like any other background that you've heard about them, there were challenges there. And so beekeepers in Slovenia in the 17th century started looking at other adaptations. The background with the history of Slovenes, I imagine most of you at this point have heard of World Bee Day. World Bee Day is named and is celebrated May 20th, the birthday of Anton Janša, who was the first instructor of modern beekeeping in the world in the court of Maria Theresa. And in his short lifetime, he managed to leave a gigantic impact on the world of beekeepers, publishing 2 books, one while he was still alive and the second posthumously. And he was an art student. So he not only left his mark both in the literature, but also in the arts and the practices of beekeeping that have endured in Slovenia to this day. So I run tours for beekeepers to Slovenia. We're going back in May. And if you're interested in going along, we do go to visit the little town called Zrovnica, which is where his father has a bee house that is still in use today. It's protected, and the background that you saw earlier on my slide is from that bee house. So throughout the 17th century and into the 18th century, Slovenians were coming off of the skeps, as I said, and looking towards removable frame hives. And so what you're seeing here is Slovenes' first attempt to transport colonies throughout the country, taking advantage of the high mountain meadows where you would see flowers blooming all the way through the end of August. And so they would transport them using either cattle or horses up and then put them out into the meadows where the bees could continue to forage throughout the season. So these beautiful beehives were already painted, as you could see, and numbered even back in the 17th and 18th century. At that time, they were also experimenting with ways to manage the atmospheric conditions. This is the bee house of the father of Anton Janša in Zrovnica. And as you can see, these are stacked, but also, one next to each other, taking advantage of the heat of the colonies. You see the original thatched roof up top, which is traditional, as well as the high arch. And so this is the first adaptation to try and manage colonies and deal with both the cold and the snow that is endemic in Slovenia. Around the late 1890s, a beekeeper by the name of Anton Jonna started playing around with the idea of double and triple layer and stacked hives into a bee house to try and minimize the impact of cold and snow. So the area where he was working is very remote, very cold, high winds. And so what you're seeing here on the right is the very first adaptation of what came to be known as the Aja hive. He was taking a lot of his influence from a Swiss beekeeper, Alberti, and he wanted to give credit where credit was due. So he called the hives the Aja hives, A for Alberti, J, which is the pronunciation of this Z with a little diacritical over it for Joniderzic, which is his own family name. So you can see in this level, in this photograph here on the right, we have 4 of the 2-level hives, and originally they were 9 frames over 9 frames. This one here on the lower left, they were experimenting with different materials to keep the colonies warm, and so I believe that this You can see this exact hive at the Beekeeping Museum of Slovenia in Radolica. So this was actually a straw inner layer here for insulation. The basics of the Aja system. This, what you're seeing here in this photograph, is a 3-level, 30-frame adaptation of the predominantly, I would say 95% of beekeepers in Slovenia are using those Aja hives today. So, and you'll see a couple of different adaptations here. Looking at the door here, you have both top and bottom ventilation flaps, and these are open year-round to allow excess moisture to escape the hive. There's also an integrated foam core that is usually in place here. If you think of an open cell foam that runs the length of the inside of the hive, that's in use all the time. And there are some beekeepers in Slovenia that will remove their outer door here completely to take advantage of being able to ventilate the hive during winter. So a couple of things that you can see here. The interior of the hive. And if you're looking at this back wall, this is the front wall, this is the bee side. You have 2 metal spacers, top and bottom at each level, and it looks like they have teeth. The teeth are there to maintain the bee space of all of the frames, which are then resting on these metal bars here. The board underneath here is a spacer board to maintain bee space. So your workers and your queen can transit through this board. Each level also has an entrance. This one is a small one here at the back. And then here on the left, we have the other 2 levels. You can see that there is an inner cover as well, and a cork here at the bottom level. This is your brood, generally your brood chamber, although you can run both levels as a brood chamber if you wish, and just use the 3rd level as a honey super. So one of the unique characteristics of an Aja hive is the coved frames here. And so what you're seeing, this compares, very differently to Langstroth frames, which are tapered. The frames of an Aja hive are straight. They're coved top and bottom, and this is for a couple of reasons. Number one, as you know, bees love to propolize everything that they can get their little legs on. And so with this adaptation in the hive, you have only 2 small points resting on the bars that they can propolize. And so if you were to have a flat bottom frame like a Langstroth, they would be able to propolize a whole inch in place, and that would make it much more difficult to remove the frames from the hive. The other thing that the cove tops and bottom do is that when you are removing those frames, that you have a space for your bees to kind of channel under, so you're not crushing them as you remove those frames from your hive. So it's a much less invasive process for the bees, and thus your possibility of being stung during inspections decreases greatly. So I will say this: I have been stung once each year for the last 3 years, and that's it. The other beautiful thing that you can do with these frames is you can reverse them upside down and turn them around completely and put them back in. The hives themselves create a microclimate for the bees, and so the viscosity of the honey that comes from these hives is about 2% less than in a normal hive, a normal Langstroth hive. So people say, oh, you can't do that. The honey or the nectar is going to run right out of the cells. No, it doesn't. It is, so Slovenians consider honey from Langstroth hives to be very runny. They don't consider it to be good quality honey. Theirs is so thick that you could stick a spoon in it and it will just stay aloft. So it's a really interesting thing. I just pulled my frame not too long ago, and everything was at 15.5%. So this is an additional photo of the insides of the hive. Here you have the feeding system at work. There are a couple of different feeding systems. This one is a 1.5 liter food grade safe plastic bottle with a ribbed tube, and you remove the cork from this hole, stick your ribbed tube in there, and the bees will transit down here and take their sugar syrup back into the hive. Generally, I will fill my bottles up to about 3/4 of the way full, and they will drain it in about 4 days. There are some additional hives. This is the more modern system. You will see some that also have a pour door, so you can just pour the sugar syrup into the door. And that works too. It tends to attract more ants, but both are effective systems. Here in this photograph on the right, you see that spacer board pulled out. You also see a queen excluder here between your brood chamber and your first honey super. These are generally reversible, so you can pull these out. And so starting this week, I will be removing my queen excluder from between levels 1 and 2, moving it up to between levels 2 and 3, and then I will put a spacer blockout board in here. This one will come down here, and I will remove all of my top level frames. In Slovenia, beekeepers generally send their bees into winter with just 10 frames of honey, nothing else. They are only running 2 levels hives, so they will completely clear these out. And because they're carniolans, they require much less in the way of honey resources. And so the overwinter loss rate for these hives is generally about 10 to 15% year over year, which compares greatly with our 40 to 50% losses. But because they're carniolans, they get through winter just fine on 10 frames of honey. So what to look for? So the standard guidance that I give people is, if you're going to purchase Slovenian Aja hives, the quality of the frame will tell you everything about the overall build quality of those hives. So look to the hives, look to the frames, and what you'll see is you will see that they have a dovetail. The very best frames have a dovetail to them, so they will take quite a bit of wiggle. And so most of the time there is also a reverse rabbit joint underneath here, so you can see. So these hives, they are not butt ended at all, but it's very high quality wooden construction. All hives in Slovenia are built of kiln dried spruce. They are kiln dried so that they do not ever expand again. When in contact with the bees and their very moist, very high humidity environment. So Aja exterior. So we have here on the left, we have the you'll see the difference in the 2-level hive and 3-level hive. Back here on the left is the beekeeper side. And then here on the right is the front side of the hive. Underneath this first layer, there is actually an air gap, which is insulating. And then there's a second layer of wood. So what you see here are oak handles and an oak entrance reducer. Each level has an entrance. You can see here, they can be open and closed. And this is your landing board. It's very small, so you would want to have an extra landing board here in your bee house. And these hives are designed to go into a structure. They never sit out in an open field. You can't just put a piece of wood over the top of them and call it a day. The general rule is that you paint back about 2 or 3 inches on the side, the top, and then the front side right here 2 to 3 layers of exterior water grade stain or paint. And generational system, because if you do so, these hives will last 20 years at a minimum. The standard rule in Slovenia is it should last a generation, but the truth of the matter is that there are hives that have been going for 40, 50, 60, even 100 years in some cases and are still in use. My cousins in Slovenia have some hives that have been in use since the 1950s, and there's a few of them that are still going. So the hive houses that these beautiful hives are housed in are called čebelnjaki. Čebel is the Slovenian word for bee, for honeybee specifically. And so what you see here is a 15 hive house and built into the side of the hill here. And it has a number of features that you would want to incorporate if you were going to build a Slovenian Aja apiary. We have a very deep, wide landing board that runs the length of the hives. We have a deep overhang that protects the hive fronts from excess moisture. And the hives are protected top, bottom, and 1, 2, and 3 sides on the back. So in Slovenia, typically hives are not painted white. They are incorporated with bright colors, and they reflect the traditions, the interests, the character of the family that owns them. And this is really a generational family experience. So you have lots of people who are very musical, lots of people who are artistic. And so you will, many people are very religious. And so you will see these themes again and again in the decorations on the beehives. So there are many different adaptations that make this a great system for those who are disabled vets, who are elderly, even children, because they're so easily managed. And you can choose to use a smaller apiary and build this any way you want. So here we have, on the left, we have 4 traditional 2-level hives, and we have a little space for storage. This one here, we have 7 2-level hives, and then we have a number of nucleus hives and also some storage. And as you can see, there are landing boards and there are deep overhangs in both cases. This is the one that we started out with, now lives in Rhode Island, but used to live in Alexandria, Virginia. So you see 6 3-level hives and the same wide landing board, deep overhang. And these are traditional Slovenian hive front boards. So this was our first year. And as you can see, the leaves have fallen. We started out with 2 and then moved up. This is our backside here on the right. And as you can see, protected from the elements, but easily opened. So this one, just like the most of the hive houses in Slovenia, is made of a wood species called larch. Cedar is also a really great option for the United States. And when you open up the back doors, this is how it looks inside. So a little space for storage for your hive table, for your frame stands, for all of your tools. And there are many different options that you can use for your hive house to take advantage of apitherapy, which is breathing bee air, or just relaxation. There's a number of different options for beekeepers to kind of grow their supplemental income through options like that for both mental health treatment and respiratory treatment. But you don't have to go big. You can just have a few small hives, and 90% of beekeepers in Slovenia have just a few hives for their family and their own use. So I really like this little A-frame one. We just have 2 hives and then 3 nucleus hives. So you have, room for an additional source of income, selling nukes. And then people just generally take 4 or 5 frames of honey a year, whatever they need for their own use. And then you have bigger Cebulniaki. So this one is the hive of a gentleman whose name is Andre Rus, who is the head of the Domžala Village Beekeeping Association. So he has quite a few more hives. And he has quite a few nucleus hives because he makes a lot of money selling nucleus hives. And he also spends a lot of time in his apiary. He's in his 80s and he's still beekeeping. And then you have even bigger Cebulniaki. So this one is about 80 hives with for extraction purposes and also a tasting room. So I visited this one back in 2019, right before COVID hit. So this is quite a big apiary in a beautiful little village called Tabor. And this gentleman who runs this also makes fantastic medica, which is a fermented honey beverage. This is what it looks inside. So you can see there's table, so he can put wood slats across and work the upper levels. And then there's storage underneath. You don't have to build them from wood. If you get closer to the Adriatic, beekeepers are using different materials. This one is made of stone, and it is plastered just like most of the houses in that region. There's a lot less wood. You find more bushes rather than big trees. So this is an adaptation for that environment. And the brick helps take advantage of cooling the hives because it does get quite warm in this area, even in May and June. So these are some pictures of apitherapy apiaries. So this one belongs to, on the left, a gentleman by the name of Blaž Ambrozic, whose English is fabulous, and he gives great opportunities for visits to the apiary. So we always go see him on our bee tours. And this is his double-decker sleeping loft. So you can go in and take a nap and take advantage of bee air. And then you can look out right here, and there's a window, so you can watch the bees taking off and landing. Which is a fabulous experience and very relaxing, sleeping with the bee air. So this was my first experience in Slovenia back in 1999. And I said to my cousins, I really need more asthma medicine. And they said, no, you don't. You just need to go take a nap in the bee house. So get your pillow and your book and go take a nap. And they were absolutely right. So this is an additional income source for many beekeepers. The going rate in Slovenia for apitherapy treatments is about 150 euros a treatment. So something to consider if you're considering an Aja apiary is to build large enough so that you can take advantage of this and integrate something like this into your apiary. They also are using mobile apiary options. So here on the left, you'll see a large scale commercial beekeeping operation. So this truck will generally have, I believe this is about 45 hives on each side. So about 90 hives rolling down the road here. And then this one is also smaller, but this one is for nucleus hives. So each one of these sides is nucleus hives. So, we probably have about 80 nucleus hives, and these are generally moved and transported from region to region to take advantage of floral resources that are in bloom. The Slovenian Aja structure is highly adaptive for people with disabilities. So gentlemen like Dusan, even though they're in a wheelchair, can generally beekeep independently. This apiary was built for the benefit of the Prekmurje Beekeeping Association with a collaboration from Slovenia's Beekeeping Association. So the beekeepers in this region are all disabled, and this is their apiary, and they work together, they harvest together, they manage together, and they are fully independent. And let me say, this is a fabulous bee house. It was the first time I had ever seen an integrated moat built around the apiary to minimize ants. It's just brilliant. They take advantage of gutter system, and so you have a fully integrated moat that is constantly bringing morning dew into it to keep ants out. So brilliant structure. But you know, the beauty of these hives is that they're so easily adapted that even a child can independently manage them. So this is my now 11-year-old with his own hives, and he's managing things on his own while his mom sits down and takes a rest. So I'm available for questions. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you. Does anyone have questions?
I do. See who, say hello to me here. There. Are these hives
I'm
generally available? And where could I purchase one or get blueprints to build one of these?
So they're let me. Oh, I see some questions in the bar. So these are not typically easily available in the United States. There are two retailers, myself and a woman in New Hampshire, Suzanne Brilliette, who import them from Slovenia. And so what we mainly do is education with them. There are people who are importing them from Eastern Europe and saying they're Slovenian. However, the quality is somewhat questionable. So, you know, what I would say is the best option before you, if you're thinking about going with this, is see it and get your hands on it from someone. That way you can know exactly what you're getting before it shows up at your door. It is a more expensive system to either build or to purchase because you're considering also the cost of, you know, import or construction, as well as building a bee house. Now, the benefit is that, you know, if you're thinking about Langstroth hives, you know, every 3 to 5 years, your equipment's shot. And so then you're throwing it away. So if you're thinking about, you know, that cost, you know, multiplied over multiple years, it can get quite expensive. You know, I first started running my Aja hives in 2018, and I expect they've darkened in color, and that's it. So they are still going strong. I expect that, you know, as you know, I've been informed in Slovenia that they should last at least 20 years. I think they're probably going to last the rest of my life. You know, and that someday my children will be taking them over. So you can build your own. There is one guide that I would recommend. There's an entomologist in Slovenia by the name of Janko Bozic, who has written a book called A to Z, to A to Z, Beekeeping with the Slovenian Hive, which is in English. We have it available on our website for purchase. And this is a guide that talks to you about how to build a bee house, how to build your hives. There are blueprints, that are plans in there, talks about various equipment and pieces of hardware. I do sell the hardware in addition to hives. So for those who are thinking about building, I would refer you to Dr. Bozic's book for guidance. And there are quite a few people in Virginia who have them as a result of you know, my advocacy and some others. So if you were at EAS recently, also in the Maryland area, there are quite a few beekeepers who are, you know, folks who have been beekeeping for 10, 15, 30 years who have them as well. Looking at questions.
Is there one nearby?
Kimberly. What's that?
Isn't there someone, I think you were telling me that there was someone close by that had one. Like Powhatan? Was there somebody in Powhatan?
There are a number of people. There are folks that are in Farmville. There are folks that are in Powton. We have some folks that are closer to Fredericksburg that have them, as well as Charlottesburg. All right, sorry, Charlottesville. So I hope that covers pretty much everyone in your area.
I think it does.
So, but the guidance that I give to someone starting out is really and truly, you know, I'm happy to connect folks with people in their area to go see them, but really and truly get your hands on them and go and spend a day working them, so that you know what a well-built Aja hive looks like, because it is really, really hard to do research over the internet. And what I find is that this is an expensive system, but people are trying to save $30, $50 by, you know, importing something that they've never seen, that they don't understand how it works, and they've never had their hands on, and then it shows up and it's not nearly as pretty as it looks online. And then you get yourself in trouble. And so what I would say is connect with someone who has them, and connect with someone who's had them for a year, and so you can find out, how is it working? How, you know, what is the propolis buildup like that? Is the bee space right? Because if the bee space is wrong, you're going to have problems. And there are some that are being built here in the United States that are either built by woodworkers who don't understand bee behavior, or they're beekeepers that don't understand woodworking. And so in both cases, you end up with problems. Usually on the beekeeper side that doesn't understand woodworking, you end up with hives splitting open because they don't understand that you need kiln dried wood, that you're going to have your best results there. You know, and with the woodworker side, if they don't understand bee behavior, they're going to try and, you know, just generally use Langstroth frames and put them in there, and then you end up with a Broxa propolis. And so every single year about mid-June, I get a bunch of calls from people who are saying, I can't get my frames out. I have these hives and they have Langstroth frames in there, and now I can't even get my inner doors open. So, you know, the system was never intended, the Aja system was never intended for Langstroth frames. And so folks are trying to mix apples and oranges, and it doesn't work well. So that would be my caution when considering this system, is really and truly, you have 120 years of research and development that have gone into these hives. That's why the frames look like they do. And so they have data back, you know, based on trial and error, they have designed these hives to look the way they do now. Other questions?
Yes, I'd be interested in hearing your experience with mites and wax moths in this particular system.
Beetles.
Oh, I'm sorry, and beetles, yeah.
I think that, you know, I mean, have I seen wax moths? Yes. Occasionally, you know, as you know, a well-managed, healthy colony will keep them out of control. I mean, I haven't seen them in years. So, you know, I would say you would manage that as a health, you know, your overall health strategy, you know, to make sure that your babies are well nourished, make sure that, you know, your hygienics are good. In your region, the bigger challenge is going to be dealing with small hive beetles. And so that is not an agricultural pest that is present in Slovenia. They do not have them, although they are in Italy and they are in Austria and they are in Croatia, because of the Alps, which are so high and so rocky. They are not present in Slovenia. And I keep saying to the Slovenes, I keep saying to Dr. Bozic, it's coming, guys. You might want to plan for that. And they just laugh and they say, we have the Alps. But it's something that you have to manage, especially in the mid-Atlantic states. So Swiffer sheets on the bottom. There is in every hive that we have, there is an integrated IPM board. It is a metal board. You would spray it with PAM cooking spray, just the same as you would in a Langstroth hive. There is a, there's also an integrated, it's not quite a, it's a wire board. It looks a little bit different than a, number 8 hardware cloth. But it's a integrated pollen screen for pollen collection during pollen flows. So when that's not in use, you keep it out. That's how you keep small hive beetles and wax moths from nesting under there, and the bees are unable to clean it out. So, those kind of tricks, but, have I put Swiffer sheets down at the bottom? Yes, I have. I personally have had more luck with the Beetle Blaster internal traps and putting them between frames 1 and 2 and 9 and 10 on the sides. I have also used the Guardian entrances, the long red narrow ones, on my lower entrance. And generally I would only have one of my upper entrances open, just to minimize the opportunity for small hive beetles to come in. So, it's a colony health issue more than anything else. If you're, doing what you should do, to maintain and to do splits, you would, you're going to have much less of a problem with small hive beetles. As far as Varroa treatment, Slovenians throughout the course of the year are using, what we would call an IPM technique, which is brood breaking. And so what they will do is, end of July, they'll pull all their frames for extraction, and they'll pull 3 frames and their queen, move it over to a nuke box, wait 21 days till all the cells are open, and then use oxalic acid treatment on it. And then they can reintroduce their queen back there. But at that point they will, the colony will make a new queen. But at that point they will have broken all that brood, and they will hit the, as they like to describe it, hit the mites when the tank lid is open. So that's what they're doing throughout the course of the season is that sort of technique. The other thing that they will do is they will leave one frame completely empty of foundation. And can I show you a frame? Yes, I can. They will leave one frame without foundation, and they will have 2 strips of wood in there. So the bees are going to draw that out and drone comb. Every time they go in, they look for capped drone comb, cut it out with a knife, throw it in the wax melter. Next time, cut out the next one, throw it in the wax melter. So you're removing about 60% of your drone and your Varroa load throughout the course of the season. And then primarily they're either using an oxalic acid sublimation, an oxalic acid drip, or they are also able to use a formic acid drip, which obviously we are not, because of USDA laws, able to do. But those are their techniques for managing Varroa in these hives. Let's see. Do they have pre-made foundation? I'm answering Chip Deal's question. So let me get back into my slides here. I can show you a frame. I mean, they're just they're basically the same as ours. They're just, the foundation is the same that we would use. And so these are pre-drilled top and bottom. So you can use wire, or you can snap in plastic foundation if you wish. So other questions?
Are they the same size?
So pre-med foundation. So the challenge with importing this system to the United States is the fact that the frame size is different than we are using in this country. Their frames are about an inch narrower and about an inch and a half longer than a traditional Langstroth deep frame. And so the problem is twofold. Number one, because of USDA laws, it is impossible and illegal for me to import foundation from Slovenia without an export license and a certificate. I cannot legally get that from most of the major manufacturers over there. They simply won't give it. I can ask if I can purchase foundation and they'll say, I'm sorry, it's not possible. So, trying to bump up against USDA laws is challenging. The other challenge is because of the difference in frame, they're just a little bit wider. And so most of those are not going to go into a radial extractor. So for someone who's a hobbyist or a sideliner or someone who's just starting out, you can get them here. And then your frames won't fit in the, so you're doing crush and strain, or you're having to purchase a more expensive extractor, something that probably a club is not going to have on loan. So for that reason, when I was looking to import these for my own use, because I have scoliosis and I'm not able to lift, I went to Slovenia and found a manufacturer who had been manufacturing them for about 15 years, a gentleman by the name of Alexander Yarman, who had been working with wood as at a company that made high-end furniture and cabinetry for about 30 years. And so when the company went belly up in 2008, he said, well, what do I want to do now? Well, I've always wanted to be a beekeeper. So he bought all the equipment from the company that was going bankrupt, and he set it up on his farm. And he built his own apiary and his own hives, and then he started a company. So I found him in 2018, and I had him remanufacture the 2-level hives to use a Langstroth deep foundation. And so what you saw here on the slides was the 3-level 30 frame hives that I have in use, and those that we sell. So it's compatible with any foundation that you can purchase at a US manufacturer, Man Lake, Dedant. Also, it will, the frames can be used in an extractor that uses a Langstroth deep frame. Other questions? Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you folks tonight. I hope this has been educational for you.
Can you give us your website and your contact information if we want to get on and look at the book
Sure.
you referred to? And
Sure can. There we go. So this is our web address. And if anyone is interested in chatting with me,
got it.
personally, I do a lot of education, and I do a lot of care and feeding of people who are just starting out to figure out what their needs are, what their physical capabilities are, challenges are, to help them design an apiary that's going to work with them, that they can grow old with. And that's really the goal of Slovenian Aja beekeeping. This, in Slovenia, one in every 200 people is a beekeeper. They want everyone to be a beekeeper. And so they've designed a beautiful system that really takes people from childhood all the way to very old age, and allows for generational, adaptation, generational collaboration for management of these hives. And so people start beekeeping in school. There are 150 schools of beekeeping in elementary, middle, and high schools across the country. And so people start beekeeping when they're in elementary school with their parents or their grandparents, and then they go through a lifetime of it. And, when they pass on in their 80s or 90s, they're still beekeeping, and then their kids take it over, and the tradition continues. So it's a lovely historic and very culturally, relevant and important trade for Slovenians. So I'm proud to share our heritage with you tonight. So thank you for letting me come and tell you about us. And if you're interested, we have another tour that we're doing in May. So we'll be going over and spending 10 days in Slovenia. We'll go to the Adriatic and spend a couple days there. We go all the way to the Hungarian border. We gourmet eat our way across the country, going to apiaries and vineyards and seeing just the full wealth of Slovenia's agricultural products, prosciutto factories, pumpkin seed oil factories, vineyards. So it's a lovely tour. So we stay at the tourist farms, as well as thermal spas. So if you're interested, look at our website and check us out. So thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you. If anyone has any more questions, you can throw them in the chat, or you can send me an email. Here, I'll put my email up there as well.
Well, I, for one, am intrigued. And I think I really want to try to find where one of these are in the Central Virginia area. I'd like to do a field trip. I'd love to see how it works.
We have a number. We have a number of customers who are in your area. So if anyone's interested, I can connect you. And you can go out and see their apiaries and get some ideas for your own, or come along with us on the tour, and it's just you'll get to see it firsthand for yourselves. So the hospitality of Slovenia's beekeepers is really unparalleled, and they love to show off their apiaries, and the food is amazing. So please get in touch if you're interested. I want to be a resource for the community, especially if you have physical disabilities. None of us are getting any younger. I'm 52 now, and what I will say, as my last comment, is when I built my bee house, I was in my early 40s, and so I didn't yet have skiers' knees. And so I built, that little bee house 3/3. And what I've discovered now that I'm 50, that, my children are managing those lower hives because it's just a little hard to get down that low. So think about your back and your knees when you're 80, and build horizontally, put them at tabletop height. You can manage from a stool. You don't have to stand. There's no lifting. Your lifting is lifting out one frame at a time. So, you're opening your kitchen cabinet and you're removing your inner door. And instead of lifting a 60-pound box, you're simply pulling a heavy book off. It's a beautiful system. We have beekeepers in Slovenia that are doing it from a wheelchair. We have veterans here in the United States who have lost limbs. I talked to a gentleman this morning from Vermont who fell off his bicycle. He's been a customer of ours for a few years, but he had a bike accident this summer and broke his clavicle. But he said, "Thank God I've got the ajas, so I can still manage with one hand." So it's something to consider, but this is really, generational adaptive beekeeping for everyone. So, it's a beautiful system. So thanks so much for letting me share this with you. And I hope this has been helpful and educational.
And next time you're in Virginia, come see us. We'd love to host you sometime and somewhere. It'd be wonderful.
Oh, I absolutely will. I don't know if I'm going to be at Virginia State. I expect that I will be at the next EAS. So, consider coming to see me at EAS, and you can get your hands on these hives. But, really and truly, I'm happy to put folks in touch with our customers down there so you can see them and touch them yourself. That's really my advice, is get your hands on it before you try and buy it.
Once
Thank
again,
you.
thank you. All right,
Thanks so much.
all right, yeah, who wants to do a field trip to Slovenia?
Yeah.
I'd love to.